Good morning, friends. This video, we are going to discuss about cloud native platform, then 12 factors, right? 12 factors app. So when you say cloud native platform, it is an approach to building and running application that exploits the advantage of cloud computing delivery. That means when we are deploying some applications to cloud, to get the cloud computing advantage to the applications, so we have a cloud native platform, right? And this cloud native application conform to a framework or contract designed to maximize resilience through predictable behavior. And one more thing is when you are developing cloud native applications, how quickly it can recover for the failures. That is what is the maximum resilience. So further, once again, we use some contract called 12 factors. Okay. Then the organizations require a platform for building and operating cloud native application and services that automates and integrate on 4 characteristics. So this is very, very important actually. So it's not just, okay, we are moving from monolithic to microservice architecture and push those applications to cloud. First of all, the platform should be cloud native platform and our application must be cloud native applications, right? So the 4 characteristics, let us discuss first. So there are, first one is DevOps. The second one is continuous delivery. Third one is microservices. Fourth one is containers. So these are the 4 characteristics. So what do you mean by DevOps first? So DevOps is an organization level culture where it helps developers and operation teams to work together to deliver shared value to the customer. So DevOps is not exactly a tool or DevOps is not a role. It is an organization level culture where developer and operation team work together, right? Then what is continuous delivery? This continuous delivery enabled by agile product development practices, right? It is all about shipping small batches of software to production constantly through automation at less risk and get feedback faster from end user. So this is where we are going to use tools like GitHub. Similarly, we use Jenkins, Concourse, other tools, right? The third one is microservices. So what do you mean by microservices? So microservice is architecture is a method of developing software application as a suite of independently deployable, small. Each service runs a unique process and communicate through a well-defined lightweight mechanism to serve a business goal. For example, we are developing microservices like, so each service will be deployed independently. Assume that it is running as a Spring Boot application. Suppose there is an order service running on one Spring Boot application, payment service running on one Spring Boot application, and they are running independently and smaller in code base. So each service runs as a separate Java process, right? If I am running 10 Spring Boot application, 10 different services, when you check the Java process, each will have a different Java process, right? And how they communicate through a lightweight mechanism to serve a business goal, right? So lightweight here is like, for example, REST is like lightweight, right? Because REST is not a protocol, it runs on HTTP, so it is not going to add any additional overhead compared with SOAP, right? So the microservice has to communicate using REST endpoints, lightweight mechanism, right? So here we discuss about continuous delivery where the Agile says shipping small batches of software. So that is where microservice comes to the picture. Microservice is a pattern. So as part of continuous delivery, as microservice comes as independent, deployable and smaller applications, so we can push into different environments, right? Then comes to containers. The 4th characteristic is container. See, containerization is not virtualization technology. So virtualization is different, containerization is different. So containerization is all about the application delivery technology. How do you deliver the application? That's where containerization comes into the picture. For example, you create one image of your application, okay, and with application and dependencies, and how do you push that image into different environments, right? Maybe development, staging and production, maybe testing environment, right? So there are, popular containers like Docker is very popular. Similarly, Pivotal Cloud Foundry has a Garden container. Similarly, there is a LXD for Linux containers. Similarly, OpenVJ, Rocket containers. Like that, we have different containers. Out of this, Docker is very popular. So it is all about how do you deliver the application. It is not just virtualization. It's not about virtualization. It's a different concept all about delivering the application to different how quickly you can deliver your application to production, right? So these are all the 4 characteristics of cloud native application. We discuss about 4 characteristics, right? That is how the cloud native platform is built and cloud native applications are developed, right? Now this cloud native application conform to a framework or contract designed to maximize resilience through predictable behaviors. So what do you mean by that actually? So like we discussed, whenever a failure comes, how quickly it can recover. That is called resilience, maximize the resilience, right? So here there is a contract for the applications. So if you look at this slide, so there are different levels you can see here. For example, application framework, like when you're developing your microservice using Spring Boot or anything, microservices, we have a contract called 12 factors. Similarly, for container runtime, there is a contract. This is like a Cloud Foundry, Pivotal Cloud Foundry. We use some kind of contract like BOSH, right? Similarly, infrastructure automation has a contract or cloud provider interface. But here, our main focus is, as an application developer, we need to follow 12 factors app. So that is what is a contract, right? To improve, to maximize highly resilience. So what do you mean by 12 factors? So these are all the 12 factors you can see here. So 12 factors is a methodology for developing software as a service. So when I say software as a service, each microservice is like a software service, right? Because each microservice will be running independently and it exposes one endpoint. So any other microservice can call that service using the endpoint, right? So that is what is a SaaS, software as a service. Normally, when you talk about cloud services, like infrastructure as a service, platform as a service, similarly, we have a software service where the entire product, like microservice, will be running as one independent deployable service, which is exposing some endpoint that can be called from other microservices, right? So what is this methodology is all about? Like I told you, 12 factors is a methodology for developing software as a service. So let us discuss one by one factor. First, let me come with code base. So one code base tracked in, there is a SCM. That means the source code management, right? SCM stands for what code? Source code management. Or we can even talk about version controller system, right? So that's what is where GitHub comes into the picture, right? So there would be one centralized source code management. So that is like a GitHub, and the deployments will happen into different environments like development environment, staging, and production, right? And the second one is dependencies. So what do you mean by dependencies? Explicitly declare isolate dependencies. Suppose when you're developing some application like Maven, Gradle, when you're developing Maven, there's a pom.xml is a dependency where we are going to mention our application level dependencies. We are using Spring Boot, like Spring Boot starter classes, and similarly there's a other dependencies will be mentioned in the pom.xml, right? So that should be externalized from your application. Similarly, we are using Docker. So Docker comes with a Docker file where we are going to define about some metadata of the Docker file. Similarly, if you are using Pivotal Cloud Foundry or any Cloud Foundry, normally when it comes to PCF, there's a manifest.yml file where we are going to mention about the Pivotal Cloud Foundry related metadata, right? So that is all about dependencies. It must be declared separately from your application. Then comes to configuration. Store configuration in the environment. So normally when you are developing microservices, what happens actually, each service, if it is a Spring Boot application, each application to start up, there would be one bootstrap.yaml file where we mention about the port numbers and other configurations, right? But the application related properties, suppose we are developing some account service and it requires some properties like account type, okay? There are some interval, okay? There is a currency type. There are few things which will go to property files, right? But these property files, instead of putting into the application, all the properties files can be stored into GitHub, for example, Git kind of storage, right? And there would be one config server. So we can use a config server. Let all these microservices through config server will talk to Git. So for example, here we have 3 Spring Boot applications, right? These application property files will be stored in the Git. And these property files for all the environments. For example, there's a development point of view. Suppose we have application-dev.property. Similarly for QA properties, production properties. So what is the advantage of this? It is centralized. Anytime we can go to Git and modify these property files, and these changes can be automatically applied to the Spring Boot applications without restarting it. Like for example, in Spring Boot, we have an actuator. There is a tool. This actuator provides a refresh endpoint. Using that runtime, we can apply those, refresh the properties, right? So that is the main purpose of going for configuration. So let us have a centralized configuration for all the environment specific property files. Let these applications connect to those properties using cloud config, and runtime any changes can be managed very easily, right? Then comes to backing services. Treat backing services as attached resources. So very important thing is when you're developing microservices, right? Each microservice will be running as a software as a service, right? Similarly, if the microservices require some resources, suppose there's an application which requires MySQL database, or it may require some other storage, right? Or it may require some Redis cache, or it requires some Amazon S3 device, anything. So instead of installing those softwares, the platform has to provide these resources as services, right? So that if you're developing one inventory service requires one MySQL database. MySQL is also available as a service. So we can bind that service into inventory service, right? So everything is a service. So treat backing service as attached resource. There is no separate resource. Resource itself will be available as a service. Any service can be bind to microservices, right? So that is the main advantage of going for backing services. Similarly, there is a build, release, run. Okay, so strictly separate build and run stages. This is very, very important actually, right? This is where, we use tools like Jenkins, Concourse, like for example, continuous integration. As a developer, when you commit your code into GitHub, we can use Jenkins to build it and test it, right? So these are the tools which we use for build, release, and run, right? Similarly, the next one is processes. Execute application as stateless processes. So very important actually. HTTP is like a stateless protocol, right? And if you want to make HTTP as a stateful, in a normal web application, we use sessions, right? But when it comes to REST runs on HTTP protocol. And the REST, one of the characteristics of REST is it must be stateless. Stateless is nothing but there's a request and response. Okay, there is no session states are stored separately in the server. If any data is to be stored, that will be stored in the database, that's different. But each call from the client to API, there is a request, the response will come. It is not going to maintain any conversation between the request and response, so that it will be very lightweight and perform better, right? So running stateless processes, right? Similarly, there is a port binding. Export services via port binding. So very important thing is when you're developing some microservices, here if you see there's an account service, search service, restaurant service, reservation service, the different services are there, right? Each service will be running in, for example, as a Spring Boot application running inside the containers. But finally, each service must expose a separate endpoint. Suppose this service will be running in some IP address and port number. This service will be running in one IP address and port number, right? They're all running as separate IP address and port numbers. Then each service to call another service through that endpoint, we can easily make the calls. So export services via port binding. Then comes to concurrency. Scale out via the process model. So what do you mean by this? Scale out. Scale out is nothing but increasing number of instances. Suppose we are developing one web application and there is a more load is coming to that application, we will increase number of instances. Like for example, web application instance 1, instance 2. Similarly, we are running some your microservices, your business components, anything. And when the load comes, suppose assume that there is an account service where it is getting more load. So we increase number of instances, right? This is called scale out. Scaling. The scaling can happen either manually or auto scaling, right? There are in the cloud environment, we have auto scaling. So that auto scaling based on the load or based on some criteria, it can increase the number of instances or maybe reduce the number of instances, right? Similarly, there is a disposability. This factor is all about maximize robustness with fast startup and graceful shutdown. That means how quickly we can start the application. So that is what is a fast startup, right? So when it comes to Spring Boot comes with an embedded Tomcat, right? So we can quickly launch the Spring Boot application with an embedded Tomcat. Compared with, there is an external Tomcat and an embedded Tomcat, which can start first actually very quickly. Embedded Tomcat can start quickly. So that is where the Spring Boot is one of the best fit for disposability. Similarly, graceful shutdown. So this is where Spring Boot uses Actuator as a tool, right? Actuator makes Spring Boot application as production ready application. Using Actuator runtime, we can call one endpoint called shutdown endpoint, right? Then automatically the graceful shutdown will happen. So there is a difference between forceful shutdown and graceful shutdown. Forceful shutdown is nothing but directly killing the process. When you kill the process, all the running requests will be abruptly terminated, right? But when you go for graceful shutdown, advantage is first the server will finish up all the existing requests. It will not accept a new request. Once the existing requests are done, then it will shut down the server, right? So we use actuators as a part of the Spring Boot application, right? Then comes to developer and production parity. Keep dev, staging, production as similar as possible. A very important thing is, so we are all going for this microservices or cloud native platform to achieve continuous delivery, right? So this is possible if the development, staging, and production environment use same kind of setup. Simple example is when we are running Spring Boot application in the production, so inside a container like Docker, in the development also we have to test with Docker, right? So development, you start Spring Boot separate application independently without Docker, and the production you say it runs in Docker, then once again we will end up with the issues, right? So the developer production parity is nothing but one simple example is Docker could be an example we can take it, where when you're launching one application in the development or staging production, that application runs inside the Docker in the same kind of environment, right? Then comes to logs. Treat logs as event streams. So normally when you're developing one simple web application, you can have logs inside that application itself, right? But when we are developing microservices, which is a distributed environment, okay, so there would be a lot of services will be developed. Instead of having logs for each individual services, let all these services will push the logs in the form of stream. You know, stream is nothing but unbounded, the continuous records, right? It's immutable records which continuously comes, right? Let these microservices will send the stream of logs to tools like ELK, Elasticsearch, Logstash, Kibana, or we can use Splunk and Kafka combination actually. So that is what is called the factor logs. Treat logs as event streams. There would be centralized logging so that we can use a Kibana as a UI tool actually. Using Kibana through Elasticsearch, we can search for the logs of any service, right? It's a centralized tool which is available, right? Similarly, we can use Splunk with Kafka. Then comes to admin processes. Run admin or management tasks as one-off processes. So very, very important thing is when you're developing Spring Boot applications, anything, your microservices, the microservices are long running, right? Suppose if I start one payment service, that service will be running 24 hours, 24/7, right? It will be running. So it starts serving the requests from other services, right? But the admin process says there would be some kind of task. So task is nothing but short-living, right? So a simple example of task would be, suppose our application would require some database level migration, or application would require some data to analyze the business insights. Similarly, there would be some kind of batch processing task will be there, right? So these things must be part of the application. So the application should be capable of managing long living tasks as well as short living tasks, right? So one of the simple example here is Spring provides Spring Cloud task. That means in our application, when you develop a Spring Boot application, anything, we can write one annotation called enable task. So this enable task, what it will do is, it will run one, like for example, based on some schedule or some interval, this task will be executed. And this task will not be continuous running as per some kind of scheduling activity. It will be for short-lived time, right? So there is a difference between short-living and long-living. Normal microservices will be long-living, long-running actually, whereas the tasks are short-lived applications, right?